A cop pulled a gun on a man who spent his life defending this country. The moment he realized his mistake, it was too late. The gas station hums with the low flicker of fluorescent lights, standing alone along a quiet highway in Bakersfield, California. It's late, too late for much foot traffic, but just early enough for the occasional traveler to stop for a fill-up and a quick snack. Inside, the lone cashier leans against the counter, scrolling through his phone, barely looking up as Obadiah Kane sets down a bottle of water and a pack of gum. A simple purchase. Nothing unusual. Obadiah swipes his card, nods his thanks, and steps back into the cool night air. The distant hum of crickets mixes with the occasional whoosh of a passing car. He exhales, rolling his shoulders, feeling the weight of the long drive. He's a man who's spent years carrying heavier burdens. Then, headlights sweep across the pavement. A police cruiser pulls in fast, tires crunching over loose gravel. Inside that cruiser sits Officer Brent Calloway. He doesn't know who Obadiah Kane is. He doesn't see a man who has led thousands of soldiers into battle. A man who has sat in war rooms with presidents. A man who has carried the weight of life and death decisions for decades. No. Calloway only sees what he chooses to see. A black man. Alone at night. In casual clothes. Driving a car that looks too nice. That's enough. His fingers tighten around the steering wheel. Another one. The reports have been coming in. Suspicious activity near gas stations in the area. A car like that with a driver like him? It doesn't add up in Calloway's mind. His pulse kicks up. This could be his moment. The moment young cops like him talk about at the precinct. The moment where instincts take over and you make a call. He steps out of the cruiser, resting a hand on his gun. Obadiah doesn't hear the officer approach at first. He's focused on unscrewing the cap on his water bottle, tossing the gum onto the passenger seat of his SUV. He doesn't sense the hostility walking toward him. Not until the voice cuts through the night air like a whip. "Stop right there! Hands where I can see 'em!" Obadiah freezes. His head turns just enough to register the sight. The glint of metal. The barrel of a gun pointed straight at his chest. For a split second his body reacts before his mind catches up. Every survival instinct from decades of war, decades of training, decades of life or death decisions flares up inside him. But he doesn't move. Not an inch. Because this isn't a battlefield. This isn't Afghanistan. This isn't Iraq. This isn't some war-torn desert where he's faced down insurgents and lived to tell about it. This is home. And yet, the look in Calloway's eyes tells him none of that matters. "On the ground! Now!" The officer's hands are shaking slightly. His stance is stiff, but his grip on the gun is firm. Too firm. His breath comes in short bursts, his adrenaline already firing at full speed. Obadiah has seen this before. A man who has already made up his mind. Slowly, carefully, he raises his hands to chest level, keeping them open and visible. His voice is even, measured. The way he speaks to young soldiers on the edge of making a mistake. "Officer, what's the problem?" But Calloway isn't hearing him. He's seeing something else. A threat. A suspect. Not Obadiah Kane. Not a general. Not a man who has fought and bled for this country. Obadiah can feel the weight of the moment settling in. It's fragile. One wrong move, one twitch in the wrong direction, and the night could end in blood. Then, flashing red and blue lights flood the parking lot. A second police vehicle pulls up fast. The doors slam open. A new voice cuts through the tension. "Wait! Stop!" And just like that, the night takes a sharp turn. Obadiah doesn't breathe too hard. Doesn't shift his stance. Doesn't dare lower his hands. He's seen what happens when men in uniforms make snap decisions. Split-second choices. Life-ending mistakes. But this time it isn't a battlefield. There aren't enemy snipers hidden in the trees. There's no air support waiting for his signal. There's just a gas station parking lot, a young cop with a gun, and a situation spiraling fast. And he knows something Officer Brent Calloway doesn't. The young ones are the most dangerous. Not because they're cruel, not because they're power-hungry, but because they have something to prove, to themselves, to their superiors, to the job. Calloway doesn't see a man. He doesn't see a war hero. He sees what he chooses to see. A black man, alone at night, driving an expensive SUV. A profile, a suspicion, a reason. That's all it takes. Obadiah has lived through worse. He grew up in Louisiana, in a time when certain gas stations wouldn't have even let him inside. His father, a mechanic, once told him, "They'll always judge you first, son. Your job is to give 'em nothing to hold on to." So he worked twice as hard, made his way through West Point, spent 3 decades proving himself on the battlefield. His name carries weight in military circles. In some parts of the world, when he steps into a room, men stand at attention. But here, in this moment, none of that means a damn thing. Because tonight, his rank won't save him. He keeps his voice calm, controlled. "Officer, I'm reaching for my wallet." Slowly. He moves at a pace painfully deliberate, his fingers barely shifting toward his pocket. But Calloway's stance tenses immediately. "Don't move!" Obadiah stops, hands still in the air, fingers stretched wide. His jaw clenches, but his face stays neutral. He knows what this is. He knows what men like Calloway tell themselves. A cop pulls a gun on the wrong person. They justify it later. He moved too fast. He was acting suspicious. I thought he had a weapon. No, Obadiah isn't giving him that out. So he doesn't move. He doesn't shift. He barely breathes. But Calloway's trigger finger twitches, and for the first time tonight, Obadiah feels it. The possibility. The very real chance that this kid might actually pull the trigger, because the way Calloway is gripping that gun, he's already convinced himself he's in danger. Then, tires screech. Red and blue lights flood the parking lot. Another cop car, faster than expected. And when the second officer steps out, Obadiah sees it instantly. Recognition. She knows him, and everything is about to change. The second officer moves fast. Too fast. She doesn't hesitate, doesn't stop to assess the scene. She already knows something is wrong. Lieutenant Vanessa Grayson has been on the force long enough to recognize when a rookie is in over his head. And when she steps out of her cruiser, taking in the sight before her, her stomach knots instantly. A civilian with his hands raised, a cop with his gun still drawn, and a tension so thick it could snap with a breath. She sees the man standing under the gas station lights. She sees his build, his stance, his face, and then she recognizes him. General Obadiah Kane. Her heart slams against her ribs. This is bad. Really bad. Calloway, however, doesn't notice her reaction. He's still locked in, his jaw clenched, his breathing heavy. He knows another officer has arrived, but he assumes she's here to back him up. "This man was acting suspicious," Calloway spits out, his voice sharp, defensive. "I need him in cuffs." Grayson doesn't even acknowledge him. Her eyes stay on Obadiah. She knows his face. She's seen it in military articles, in briefing reports. She knows exactly who he is. The weight of the moment sinks deep into her chest. But she has one chance to de-escalate this before it spirals into something irreversible. "Calloway," she says carefully, keeping her voice steady, neutral. "Put your gun down." That catches him off guard. His head jerks toward her. "What?" He's non-compliant. Her voice doesn't rise, doesn't waver. But there's an edge to it now, one that commands attention. That man is General Obadiah Kane. It's like a gunshot in the silence. The color drains from Calloway's face. His fingers loosen on the grip. Grayson steps forward, lowering her voice. "You just pulled a gun on a 4-star general." A sick, sinking feeling settles in Calloway's gut. He knows that name. He's heard it before. He just didn't connect the dots in time. He opens his mouth, but nothing comes out. Obadiah watches him closely. He's seen this look before, not just on cops, not just on soldiers, on men who realize too late that they've crossed a line they can't uncross. Calloway's breathing picks up. He glances between Obadiah and Grayson. His confidence cracks like a fragile sheet of glass. But Obadiah knows it's not just about him anymore, because something is happening. Something that changes everything. A faint light. A glow. A small red dot. A recording. And then, "Oh my God, are you seeing this?" A voice. A bystander. A camera. And suddenly, this isn't just an incident. It's evidence. The video spreads like a wildfire caught in a storm. It starts as a single clip, grainy, shaky, uploaded by the first bystander who had the presence of mind to hit record. Then more angles surface, different voices, different perspectives, but the same story. A decorated general, a gun in his face, a young cop who didn't hesitate. Within hours, it's everywhere. Cable news runs the clip on repeat. The headlines are blunt. Police officer pulls gun on 4-star general in shocking encounter. Rookie cop detains war hero, backlash explodes. National uproar over viral arrest attempt on army general. By morning, every major network is running the story. The footage plays across television screens, phones, tablets, laptops. People at coffee shops, in break rooms, in living rooms. Everyone is talking about it. The outrage is immediate. Military veterans speak out first, loudly. This man gave his life to defending this country, and this is how we treat him. A former Marine snaps during a live interview. You think this was just a mistake? No, this is a pattern. Politicians weigh in, carefully measuring their words, some calling for accountability, others downplaying it as a misunderstanding. But the people aren't having it. The hashtags start trending. General Kane, # justice. For Kane, # police reform now. Twitter explodes with outrage. Instagram stories flood with clips. The video lands on the front page of Reddit, sparking thousands of heated discussions. Because this isn't just about General Kane. This is about every black man who was seen as a threat before he was seen as a person. Every unjustified traffic stop, every wrongful detainment, every life lost because of a split-second decision. This time, the victim survived. This time, the Bakersfield Police Department is backed into a corner. Within 24 hours, Officer Calloway is placed on administrative leave. The mayor releases a statement. We take this incident very seriously. The police chief looks uncomfortable during a press conference, trying to control the damage. His words are robotic, scripted. We acknowledge the seriousness of the situation. A full investigation is underway. But people don't want acknowledgement. They want action. And while Calloway is hiding behind bureaucracy, Obadiah Kane is not. Because when the requests for interviews start flooding in, he doesn't ignore them. He chooses one. Not to talk about himself, but to talk about the bigger problem, because this was never just about him. And now, the world is watching. The studio lights are blinding, but Obadiah Kane doesn't flinch. He's been in war zones, in rooms where lives were decided in a matter of seconds. This is nothing compared to that, but it's important. He sits across from the anchor in the CBS studio, posture straight, eyes clear. The world is watching. The anchor leans forward, fingers laced. His tone is careful, respectful but probing. General Kane, the video of your encounter has been seen by millions. Walk us through what was going through your mind in that moment. Obadiah lets the question sit for a second. He's not in a rush. Then, with the same calm authority that has commanded soldiers on battlefields, he speaks. I was thinking about how close I came to being just another name on a list. The silence in the studio is palpable. The anchor doesn't interrupt. He lets the weight of those words settle. Obadiah continues. That officer didn't see me. Not really. He saw a story he had already written in his head. His voice is firm but even. No anger. No theatrics. Just truth. And how many times has that same mistake been made? How many times has it ended differently? A pause. Obadiah shifts in his seat, his fingers pressing together. I'm alive because I knew how to stay calm. Because I've been trained to handle high-pressure situations. But should survival really depend on that? The video explodes online before the interview even finishes airing. His words aren't just heard. They're felt. People repost clips, quoting his lines in captions. I'm alive because I knew how to stay calm. But should survival really depend on that? That officer didn't see me. He saw a target. Veterans, activists, community leaders, they all rally behind his words. The conversation shifts. This is no longer just about one incident. It's about the system that allows this to keep happening. The Bakersfield Police Department is forced to respond. The chief holds another press conference, looking visibly drained. We are implementing mandatory training reforms, expanding de-escalation tactics, reviewing procedures for racial bias assessments. The public isn't satisfied. Protests grow, lawsuits emerge. The Justice Department announces an investigation. And Officer Brent Calloway? He resigns. Quietly. No press statement, no apology, no accountability. But Obadiah isn't looking for one man to take the fall. He's looking for something bigger. Change. As the interview wraps up, the anchor tilts his head. General Kane, what do you hope comes out of this situation? Obadiah looks into the camera, directly at the people watching at home. We say protect and serve. But that promise can't be selective. The studio is dead silent. If a man can spend his life fighting for his country, only to come home and be seen as a threat, then we have a much bigger problem. The camera stays on him for just a second longer. Long enough for the weight of his words to sink in. Then, fade to black. This story isn't just about one man, it's about the moments that don't get caught on camera. The mistakes that don't make the news, the lives that don't get a second chance. Next time the ending might be different, and the question is, what are we going to do about it? If this story made you think, don't just scroll past. Share it, talk about it, and most importantly, demand better.